You're watching Canadian Muslim News on Muslim Network TV from Toronto, Ontario. I'm Samia Sayed. Welcome to the show. Now, coming up, we have an interview on Ramadan in Northern Canada with Abdoulkarim Diakite. But first, let's go over the headlines. Canadian Islamic charity launches court bid to halt Islamophobic CRA audit. Black civil workers criticize federal mental health budget. Muslim family fears for safety amid deportation order to Egypt. Funeral held for Palestinian killed by Israeli forces. And now the details. Canada's largest grassroots Muslim organization, the Muslim Association of Canada, or MAC, launches a case in the Ontario Superior Court against a CRA audit, citing systemic bias and Islamophobia. They are asking the court to halt the 7-year-old audit process. They seek court confirmation that MAC's rights have been infringed under several sections of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Jeff Hall, MAC's lawyer, says that in their press release that facts which are innocuous, that could be regarded as such for faith-based organization of a religion other than Islam, have been taken as a basis for suspicion of MAC and its activities. A group of civil servants who are in the midst of a class action lawsuit against the federal government say they are disappointed with the recent budget proposals to support Black mental health. Secretariat spokesperson Nicholas Marcus Thompson said they were not consulted before the budget was allocated, according to media sources. The group had asked for $100 million to address trauma-informed care, whereas the budget allocated $3.7 million, which they say is inadequate in supporting Black mental health. The Black Class Action Secretariat launched a $2.5 billion lawsuit in 2020. The lawsuit seeks long-term solutions to permanently address systemic racism and discrimination in the public service of Canada. Mohammed Ibrahim and his family fear an upcoming deportation order that will force them out of their home of 5 years in London, Ontario, back to Egypt. Ibrahim claims his lawyer failed to submit his military court documents that show he had been condemned to life in prison for betraying the Egyptian government in a 2016 mass trial. According to the Immigration and Refugee Board, local media sources say that Ibrahim was denied status as his case lacked evidence of his arrest and sentence in Egypt. A permanent resident application based on humanitarian and compassionate grounds is still in process. A Palestinian man was killed and dozens were injured in clashes with Israeli forces in the occupied West Bank today, the Palestinian Health Ministry says. They identified the young man as Mohammed Hassan Asaf, whom Israeli soldiers fatally shot in the chest. Eyewitnesses say that clashes erupted after an Israeli force entered Flashpoint Joseph Tun Sargosi in the city to provide protection to Israeli settlers. Tensions have been running high across the Palestinian territory since the beginning of April amid repeated Israeli raids to arrest wanted Palestinians. That's it for the news. In the midst of the hustle and bustle of celebrating Ramadan and connecting to the Muslims in our community, we often forget about the other Muslims across Canada who are doing the exact same. But depending on where you live, these celebrations and practices can look quite a bit different. And joining us today from Ecuador is Brother Abdoulkarim Diakite, a spokesperson for the Islamic Society of Nunavut. Welcome, Brother Abdoulkarim, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for having me on your show.
Wa alaikum assalam. Brother Abdoulkarim, I'd like to begin by asking a little bit about the fasting hours in Nunavut. How do you determine what the fasting hours are? Because the daylight hours are quite extensive.
Alhamdulillah, I live in Iqaluit, the capital city of Nunavut, and this year the fasting hours are not as long as the previous year, just because we're just coming out of winter. So the days are relatively the same as, for example, Ottawa. So we start fasting at 3 a.m. and Maghrib is around 8 p.m. At this time of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to the rest of the territory, we do have some territories, the like of Arctic Bay, where they are going into longer days, and the midnight sun, as they call it, where the sun doesn't set. But in Iqaluit, we're okay for now, for this year, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. I'd like to ask a little bit about how fasting in Ramadan works then in Ecuador or even Nunavut more generally. What are some of the challenges that the community faces during Ramadan?
Well, I think the first challenge that the community faced years ago when Ramadan used to be during the summer was the long days of fasting. Maghrib used to be close to 11 p.m. and that was a very that's a very long time for people to fast. But Alhamdulillah, we were able to do it for those long days. And the other challenge that people face living here in Iqaluit is things like the supply of halal meat, the supply of even dates, the usual things that we need when we're breaking our fast. And
Mm-hmm.
the other important thing is really having, like for instance, a Taraweeh prayer, having an imam to come and lead us for those things. So those are some of the challenges that you face fasting and living in Khaloid.
Mm-hmm. And I'd like to touch on upon those later on in the interview. But I'd like to ask you now, vice versa to the first question, what are some things that you find easier than while fasting?
Well, one of the things that's easier here, at least right now, is it's still cold, so it's not hot. So the fasting is not as intense as the rest of the country. I mean, we still have snow here. It's not that hot. And the town is small, so you don't have to go for long distances to go from place A to B. So those are some of the really blessing for being here in Iqaluit. And the masjid is relatively very close to everybody's house. We'll say, within 5 to 10 minutes drive.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to ask you now, have you always lived in Ecuador?
No, I haven't always lived in Iqaluit. I moved here in 2011, so 10, 11 years now. I've been a resident of Iqaluit.
Mm-hmm. And I'd like you to tell me a little bit about the Muslim population there. How large is the Muslim community in Ecuador or even in Nunavut?
Well, I will say in Iqaluit, at least, I will say at least 200. And that's really based on the people that I see come and go at the masjid, and my interaction with the people in the community. So roughly that, but we do have Muslims, alhamdulillah, spread out throughout the territory. I visited some communities where I've met some Muslims down there, and alhamdulillah, there are even Inuits that are revert Muslim. At my surprise, I went to one community, and I found some Inuits that are Muslims, which was very beautiful to see, and very surprising at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And you said that you met many Muslims at the mosque. So I want to ask, was there always a mosque in the community?
No, no, there wasn't. This mosque was built in 2015, and prior to that, we used to meet up in brother's house to pray Jumu'ah, and that was the only prayer we used to offer, really. So we will select a brother's house, and we'll go there for Friday prayers and so on. Um, the building of the mosque took some time because we had to negotiate with the city in terms of zoning, and what's the best option for the Muslim if we were to buy a house, and how do I say it, um, renovate it to accommodate the Muslim or get a plot. But Alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed us and has made it easy for us to get a plot, and we build that masjid from scratch.
Mm-hmm. Now, touching on something that you mentioned before, that it's often challenging to find an imam or someone to lead the Tarawih prayers. How is it going right now then during Ramadan? How do the Tarawih prayers look?
Oh, Alhamdulillah, I think this year Ramadan was welcome with a lot of joy. Just because it's the first year after 2 years of lockdown with no Taraweeh, with no prayers. So we weren't able to get an imam to come in, but Alhamdulillah, there are some brothers that are leading the Taraweeh prayers. So we're happy about that.
Mm-hmm. Now, you briefly mentioned the pandemic, and so I want to ask, big challenge that we saw here in Toronto is that when our mosque closed down during the pandemic, we found it difficult to stay connected with other Muslims in the community. Did the people or Muslims in Ecuador face the same? And if so, how did they overcome this?
Yes, I mean the challenges with the COVID-19 pandemic are almost the same everywhere in the world. The same over here. When the masjid closed, it was very hard for us to keep in touch. Although we do have a WhatsApp group, but the WhatsApp group as well was a bit slow because I, I think the pandemic did take a lot of hit on people. Some people had to leave to go and join their family and stay with them. But as far as we are concerned, we we try our best to stay in touch over WhatsApp, meeting each other when we go to work
Mm-hmm.
or out in the street. We see each other. The city is small, although a lot of people weren't going out. There was at least an occasion to meet people when you go outside.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that's another benefit of living in a small city or a small
Exactly.
tight-knit community where you get to meet with everyone on an everyday basis.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So you said that there was a little bit of a supply problem with getting access to dates. So I want to ask, how do you access them now? What are some of the challenges that you've overcome to have access to those?
You know, Alhamdulillah, over the years, I think the community, the territory altogether has been a lot receptive to the Muslims community. It's easy for us. I remember when I was here in 2011, there wasn't, at least I can recall seeing halal meat. We had to talk to the store managers and ask them if they can bring us some halal meat. We asked them if they can bring us some halal yogurt and things like that. And uh, it it was a lot of work, but Alhamdulillah, now we're starting to see that most of the managers that are coming here are open to the idea. We see a lot more halal meat. We see a lot more halal stuff, and surprisingly, there was a lot of dates that came out, and just like down south, they put it on display because they knew it was Ramadan. So
Mhm.
a lot of us got our dates down there. It is a bit expensive, but Alhamdulillah, this is what we have, and this is what we have to deal with. So
Mhm.
we count our blessings. But some of us, like for me, I do also a lot of shipping. So I
Mhm.
bring my stuff up by cargo, and I stock my meat, I stock my dates and things like that. So those are your options. Either you buy it here or you ship it, or when you go
Exactly.
down, in
And I
terms of
hate to stop
preparation,
you
you
there.
leave it.
And I hate to stop you there, but unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this interview. Thank you so much for joining us today. We had some issues with your internet connection, but we were able to overcome that. And you shared a lot of insight on how the Muslim community in northern Canada celebrates Ramadan. So thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
You are watching Canadian Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. That's it from our Toronto studios tonight. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more Canadian Muslim content. Stay safe, and until next time.